Mikage Reo is the biggest waste of talent in all of Blue Lock, and I stand by that fact. He's probably one of the characters with the most unseen potential, as his weapon is considered one of the best even amongst the pros, so why is he the biggest waste of talent? There's a lot of reasons, so I want to go over Reo's development in Blue Lock, his strengths, his weaknesses, and his downfall as a striker. If you're new to the channel, I make a lot of other Blue Lock content, top 10s, theories, summaries, literally just anything Blue Lock. So subscribe if you want to see more of that. I appreciate every single one of you, and I promise I'll be cooking up more content consistently. I hate wasting time with the intro though, so let's get straight into why Reo is the biggest waste of talent. If we're going over through Reo's development in Blue Lock, we do have to go over his beginning, some parts we've seen already. I'll make this part really brief, but it's pretty important because it shows us where he started versus where he ended. Reo started playing soccer to pretty much challenge himself and also prove his parents wrong by achieving his goal of winning the World Cup. He meets Nagi, who he immediately sees has the trapping skills of a god, so he asks him to play soccer together, and they hit it off as they're undefeated up until the Team Z game. Episode Nagi does go a little bit more in depth with Reo and Nagi's backstory, but it's a lot of details. Key takeaways from it though are that we see more of Reo and Nagi's relationship and the reason why Reo is pretty much depressed after being left in the second selection. The beginning of Reo's character is actually pretty interesting because in the main story we see that he's more of a support character and midfielder more than anything, but in episode Nagi we see that Reo is super capable as a striker as well. He didn't score against Team Z, but he did have a hat trick against Team Y and had more goals than anyone else in Team Z. Keep that scoring potential in mind because if you line that up with other feats he has later in the series, you'll see my point of why Reo is such a waste of potential. Jumping into the second selection, this is where we get Reo's heartbreak arc. We already know what happens. Instead of Nagi teaming up with Reo, he decides to go with Isagi, leaving Reo behind. It honestly makes a lot more sense with the episode Nagi context because they were so close and also promised each other to stick together. But in the main manga, it seems like Reo is just a toxic ex. So Reo decides that he wants to take revenge on Nagi, teams up with Kunigami and Chigiri to go against Isagi, Baro, and Nagi. Second selection Reo is stuck to more of a midfielder position, offering help to Kunigami and Chigiri rather than moving on his own, and throughout it, he's also a very emotional player. I think the key takeaways from second selection Reo is that he's super emotional, unconfident, and just holding himself back because he's so hung up on Nagi. The third selection though is actually where we get some really good development for Reo. He was originally a confident player with Nagi, became unconfident once he was left behind, and now the third selection was about him finding his confidence, or developing something to give him confidence. After a good chat with Isagi, Reo decides to prove his worth on the field and also to Nagi by joining his team and using his new weapon, the copy. It sounds broken on hand, and it kinda is, but it's an ability to replicate other players' signature moves or techniques at 99%. Because it's Reo and he has good dexterity, he's able to copy abilities which make some players scary in the first place. Even if it's a lesser version of the original or he can't copy physiques, it's honestly not even that big of a problem. Third selection Reo gives him development he absolutely needs, something to fight on his own. So on top of already showing striker capabilities in the first selection, Reo got the copy weapon, which is debatably the best weapon in Blue Lock. He hasn't had much time to develop it though, so his confidence and ideals need some work, but it's better off than when he was in the second selection. Also keep in mind the confidence and ideals for later. This is where we get to the U20, and we see more of Reo, but more as a defender than a midfielder or striker. So on top of having striker feats and midfielder feats, he now has really good defensive feats in the U20. Stopping Shido, taking possession, which led to Baro's goal by the way, and also blocking the last shot. Reo at this point is gaining more and more confidence and more experience with his copy weapon. Alright, we're finally at the Neo Egos League, so now we can talk about Reo's wasted potential. Remember earlier how I said that Reo's confidence and ideals need some work? Well, he absolutely gets that in Manshine City under Chris Prince. Chris Prince is actually a perfect coach for Reo in my opinion, helping him find his new ideals, and body training to give him more confidence with his weapon. Considering that copy is a weapon that is reliant on the user, and that he can't copy physiques, physical training is a must for Reo. It's also one of the weaknesses he had against Shido in the U20. Jumping into his ideals though, we learn that Reo doesn't want to rely on Nagi anymore, and instead wants the power to be the one best striker in the world. So pretty much like everyone else in Blue Lock, but it's a pretty drastic change for Reo considering that his first goal was to just make Nagi the best. It's still the same dream of winning the World Cup, but instead of relying on people, Reo wants the power to do it himself. And that's kind of what Blue Lock was made for. Instead of relying on other people, you learn to rely on yourself. It's the same development that Isagi underwent, so you can say that Blue Lock at this point has worked for Reo. Getting into his playstyle and skills though, we see that when Reo talks to Prince, he wants his ideal playstyle to be a mix between Itoshi Sai and Itoshi Rin. And we actually see him pull that off in the first few minutes of the game, copying Sai's signature Nutmeg and Rin's shot in the U20. Granted, he doesn't score, but he did get through all of Bastard Minen's defense by himself with the Striker Chameleon mode. It shows that his striker abilities are on par with the people in the Neo Egoist League, and with how good the copy weapon can get, he may even surpass them. I would like to say as well, because of his ability to copy, his adaptability is also really good, maybe even on par with Isagi. And some hardcore evidence of this would be him adapting in the Manshine City versus Bastard Minen game, where he literally adapts and learns Metavision mid-game. So Reo now has a better physique, one of his flaws from the U20, strong ideals, which he's always struggled with since the second selection, and something to fight and grow with, which he learned from the third selection. Reo's growth and development up until this point is what you expect out of Blue Lock. It's what you hope every player achieves. You see how strong his ego is and his change in mentality literally moments before it all gets ruined as well. Becoming stronger so he can fight on his own, wanting to change himself instead of forcing someone else, and wanting to show the world Mikage Reo. The whole spectacle of his character was that he couldn't fight alone. That's why they gave him the development and a new weapon so that he can fight on his own. And then we get to the start of Reo's downfall, teaming up with Nagi. After a literal speech devoting himself to his ideals and wanting to become the #1 striker, Nagi pretty much brings Reo back to square one, throwing away all that development, all those ideals, and everything out of the window just to help Nagi. Now, was that the worst possible choice? No. But is it a bad choice? Yes, it's not the worst case scenario because it's Reo and his relationship with Nagi. He's also one of the best all-rounders in Blue Lock and has already played in the midfielder position. But all that potential from the Chameleon Striker mode, being able to copy the best players' playstyles and signature moves, is just gone. He pretty much caps himself off there, so he can let Nagi succeed, which he's okay with. That's why I say only Reo can do that, because of their relationship and trust in each other. But that means we won't get to see him use stuff like Metavision offensively, or see him at a full striker potential. Reo is actually warming up to be a contender to an offensive position, being able to copy the best players' moves and all those feats I mentioned before. He doesn't necessarily have the same scoring capability as strikers like Rin, Shido, or Baro, but with the potential and flexibility of the Striker Chameleon mode, his name could be put up for debate or at least put in contention for an offensive position. He could take a center midfield position like Sai and just be really aggressive, or just become a forward. Reo works because of his flexibility and potential with the Striker Chameleon mode. Isagi doesn't have the same scoring capability as the others, and people say he's better in the midfielder position, but he's still in contention and still fighting to be the best striker. And the same would have been for Reo if it wasn't for Nagi. And it really sucks. That's why I say he's the biggest waste of potential, because if you compare that S-tier weapon to any other players with huge potential, like Zan, Tetsu, or Tokimitsu for example, it kinda outshines them. Now, it can be argued that Reo became a better player and evolved after teaming up with Nagi, gaining more confidence, reaching the flow, and also achieving Metavision. Reo is pretty good right now as a midfielder, but is that better version of himself better than a Striker Chameleon mode Reo with an offensive Metavision and an offensive flow state? Personally, he does fit well as a midfielder, and plot-wise it also works. I mean, he's been playing the position the whole time, but I think his potential as a striker is actually insane, and I'm not even underrating midfielder slash defensive Reo. There's other arguments saying that he wouldn't have reached the flow or achieved Metavision if he wasn't playing with Nagi, because supporting Nagi was his challenge for flow, but challenges could easily switch between games. I mean, we've literally seen it with Isagi. His first challenge was to beat Rin and Shido, and now it's Kaiser. You see what I'm saying? The fact that he was able to get through Bastard Minen's defense by himself, having strong ideals which can lead to flow state, and the Striker Chameleon mode, it's almost endless potential for Reo. He can't copy specific world-class weapons like Kaiser Impact, for example, but it doesn't even matter because copy is a world-class weapon. So that's why I say that Reo is a waste of potential. It doesn't mean that he's a bad player, and he already clarifies this further in chapter 192 about his choice to win the World Cup and choosing Nagi. But man, the potential and development we missed out on because he wanted to help the emo trapper, Kinda sucks, man. And nothing wrong with Nagi as well, but it's a choice. Do we want to see more of Reo's striker side or more Nagi? Personally, I don't mind either, but Reo's offense was pretty entertaining to watch the few pages we got. And that's why I think Reo is the biggest waste of potential in all of Blue Lock. Comparing his potential to others, it's debatable that he has the highest potential out of all of them. We see how dangerous Metavision is in the hands of Isagi, and Isagi talks about how he lacks the physical skills or techniques to utilize it fully, which Reo can make up for and copy on top of that. And literally just the copy weapon itself is broken. Do I need to say more? It has its downsides, but its positives definitely outweigh it. And we got all of that development from literally the first selection, and hell, even an episode Nagi, just to throw it all away. I gotta say though that the Let's Play football panel is sick. Alright everyone, if you made it to the end, thank you so much. Let me know what you guys' thoughts on Reo are. If he's better as a midfielder, or do you think he had the potential to be one of the best forwards or strikers? Remember that these videos are just my opinion, and I don't hate Blue Lock or anything. It's just food for thought, basically. My name's Reo. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.